Okay guys, this week's quick tip is how I sharpen a scraper blade. My process for sharpening scraper blades is really simple, and I keep it simple because I am sharpening constantly. When I'm using a scraper, for example, to scrape a, like this figured maple guitar top, I'll probably scrape for about 5 to 10 minutes, and then I go back in and sharpen. And the tools that I use to sharpen are, I have a couple of different sharpening stones. Either one will work. This is just a cheapo one that you can get from the dollar store. This is one of those multi-grit diamond sharpening stones, multi-sided. And I think I picked this up at Harbor Freight, and I'll put a link down in the description for all this stuff here. Then I have a block of hardwood, and this is square on all faces, and it is slightly longer than the width of my scraper. So, and then finally, the tool that actually sharpens is, this is a burnishing tool, and I'll again put a link down in the description below so you can get one yourself. But the first thing I do is, I tend to use this diamond honing tool, but like I said, you can also use one of these sharpening stones, the dollar store kind. But what I'll do is, this is going to be the edge, that is the working edge. So I just set the scraper down flat on the surface of the honing stone, and then flip it over. And I'll do that a couple of times. Then I set the block of wood down onto the surface of the honing stone. And this is the 200 grit. And then I place the tool right up against the face of this block and just run it back and forth a couple of times. And then maybe one quick pass like this. And what I'm trying to do is remove any residual of the hook that's left over on the working edge. All I want is a flat surface with no curl coming off of that edge, just to get it nice and true and ready for the next step. All right, so the next step will involve drawing out the hook on the working edge. And the first thing we have to do is pull out just a thin strip of metal right along that edge. And you won't see it. It's almost microscopic, but it will be there. We do that by taking this tool, and this is hardened steel. And I set the scraper down so it's about 1/8 of an inch in from the edge of this hardwood board. And then I will just draw this back a few times. Now, I'm not putting a lot of pressure. I'm just, as much as I can comfortably bear down. You don't need to really push it too hard. Once I've pulled out that metal strip along that edge, I'll slide the scraper out so that it's about 1/2 to 3/4 of an inch off of the hardwood board. And then I will insert the slot onto the edge of the scraper, and then I'll just draw back a few times. And then you can just barely feel a nice little hook that's formed right there. And that's the hook that will do the work of the scraping. Now as I'm scraping, you can feel how sharp it is at the very beginning. You can really feel it taking off the material. And as you continue to scrape and that edge gets worn down, you can start to feel that the resistance against the blade is starting to change, and it actually lessens the longer you use it. So you'll have to sharpen periodically, as you're scraping. And you know, it just depends on the kind of wood you're using and the technique that you're using. But I typically will scrape for a few minutes until I notice that that edge is starting to wear down, and then I'm not getting the same quality of shavings as I scrape. And then once that happens, I just stop, sharpen, and hit it again. Now for shapes like this French curve, it takes a little bit of a different approach. I'm still going to probably go ahead and work the edge on both sides by laying the tool flat onto the sharpening honing stone, and I'll just take off that little edge and make it nice and flat. And this is where the screwdriver comes in handy. Screwdrivers are typically, the shaft of the screwdriver is a hardened steel. It's a tool steel. So all you have to do is just run the edge along that shape, and you'd be surprised at how easy it is doing this to form that curve, that little curl along that edge, and you can actually feel it. And once you can feel it, you're ready to start scraping with it. You can also use fine files if you need to get into some of the tight spots there, but I never scrape in here, so I don't really worry about it. It's mostly on this long edge that I need to get that hook. So that's just my basic technique for sharpening a scraper blade. It's really simple, but the beauty of it is it allows me to spend less time sharpening and more time actually scraping. I notice that there are a lot of people out there who will show techniques where they're sharpening scrapers, chisels, plane irons, and they invest a great deal of time and even money to get the tools as sharp as they can possibly get them. Surgically sharp is the term you'll hear often. But the problem is your sharpening almost becomes its own hobby. So you end up spending more time sharpening and less time actually using the tools. So I use a technique that's still very effective, but it's fast, and I can go from sharpening right back into scraping, and then I can stop and sharpen whenever I need to without worrying about losing a lot of time in the process. So that's my technique for sharpening scraper blades, and perhaps down the road I'll show how I sharpen my chisels and my plane irons, because those involve slightly different techniques. So take care, and we'll see you soon.